Good evening and welcome to Jab or Not to Jab. This is the third and final part of this mini-series, and I'm really pleased to have in the studio tonight some of our amazing young adults. So I'm going to ask them if they'd introduce themselves to you at first, but this series, so we've gone on from last week, the BAME community. So we're talking about the vaccine, we're talking about COVID, the coronavirus, and young adults. So, first person I want to come to is Tehjuana. Will you tell us something about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Tehjuana and I work with students.
Brilliant.
Yeah, my name is Jesse. I'm a pastor here at the Lighthouse and kind of work with young adults and students as well.
Yeah. My name is Bayanda, and I'm also on team here at the Lighthouse, and I oversee the youth work here. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so these three young people here represent quite a large number of young adults here in Manchester, in actual fact from all over the country, right? So I think you're quite pivotal to the understanding of where we're at with young adults, because the young adult community is a community that we've heard a lot about recently to do with COVID.
That's true.
Not always for the best reasons, but I think that some of that's a bit unfair. But I want to kind of really get out of you tonight is where you stand. Of course, this is about to jab, not to jab, but it's also about COVID and the coronavirus, and a young adult's view and a young adult's way of thinking this through in their opinion. So I want to just basically, I'm going to start with Bayanda. Obviously, you're all too young to be invited to have the vaccine at the moment. But if you were, would you have it?
I've put a lot of thought into this, and I think to begin with, when the vaccine kind of first came out, I required a lot more information. I think I was a little bit worried about, the side effects, what it could cause, and I'm not the kind of person that would get any sort of medication usually anyway, or any other form of vaccine usually. It just kind of goes over my head, and I think because of the fact that I had already had COVID as well.
Oh,
during
really?
the time, yeah. So I had COVID. So when the vaccine came out, I was wondering if I was possibly.
And were you really ill with that COVID?
Oh yeah, it was the worst. I think some of us here might have had it. Yeah, it was the worst. It was the most. The first 2 days were just terrible. I was just in my bed. I thought I was gonna die, to be honest.
Wow.
But yeah, so I thought maybe having COVID, my immune system would have, built up immunity, and I probably wouldn't need to take it. And but I think if the opportunity arose now, I probably would. I probably would take it. I'm not too sure. I still haven't really thought about it too much, but I wouldn't have a problem with taking it.
Right.
But I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to go and take the vaccine. Yeah.
Okay, good. Come back to you in a moment. Jesse, you as pastor here at the Lighthouse, and certainly with your role as pastoring our young adults and leading them, at one point it was like all of our young adults were getting coronavirus, weren't they? We were all getting infected. I'm not sure why that was, and I don't want to play detective on that, but whether you were socialising a bit too much or whatever. But apparently you had COVID.
I had it, yeah. Before everyone else had it. A lot of the young adults. I want to put that there. I'm not sure I'm to blame, but yeah. So I had it, and I had it quite bad too, where I was bedridden for probably 7-8 days.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I had moments where I could get up and move around in the room, but then it was maybe for an hour, to the point where it got so bad I couldn't even look at my phone or my laptop.
The strange thing with your family is, your sister got it, Rachel, but mum and dad didn't get it.
No, yeah, or Joshua, yeah.
So it's the amazing thing about it, isn't it?
And Rachel had it back in April 2020 when it first kind of, the whole pandemic was
Of
spreading.
course, she's a junior doctor.
Yeah, and I didn't catch it, so I thought I was immune. I was just so happy. And then finally, I actually did get it in December, which I guess the second wave, when it was more a higher variant or more easier to spread. That's when I got it.
And when you look across the community, the young adult community, particularly with the Lighthouse, I mean, you see beyond that bubble, of course.
Sure. Yeah.
But what do you think the root causes of those infections were?
It's interesting. There's a couple factors. Like, we're gonna be honest. I do think it was because there was probably unauthorized socializing. There were probably some of that was happening. I do think when a lot, not all, but a lot, when at least in the Lighthouse young adults caught it, young adults was more so around that December time when the variant was supposedly more easier to pass on. Not saying none of the young adults caught it before, but a lot of them, at least in the Lighthouse, caught it during that December Christmas period. Of course, in that period, people were allowed to socialize, go in people's houses. I think that did add to it. And to be honest, I think we could ask three of us here, but I think our view of COVID, if we're going to be super honest, was most people would rather hang out than just be stuck at home. And the pro of hanging out compared to the con of catching it, the pro of hanging out would outweigh. Because most of us and I know some of the stats and figures we're talking about young people could catch it, and unfortunately young people did die. But for the most part, not that young people were invincible, but there wasn't as many young people dying compared to the older generation.
Absolutely.
So the trade-off was, hey, I get ill for a couple of days, and then I become quote-unquote immune or something. So
But then, you see, some of our viewers who are watching this would instantly, their riposte would be, well, what about spreading it then?
Yeah.
And I don't, do you think as young adults, did you think about that at the time? Did that play on your mind a bit? You're thinking, oh, I might take this home to mum and dad or grandma, or was that a consideration you felt at the time, or did you see it in any of the young adults, or was it kind of like didn't really think that through?
Yeah, so me personally, I did not really think that through. However, when I caught COVID,
So you had it as well?
Yeah. I happened to be at home for Christmas, so that element of me potentially affecting family, especially my grandparents, I was like, whoa, this is pretty serious. I was more concerned about them catching it, especially my grandparents who are both over 80 than myself. Wow. So I think when it came to me, I was like, wow, it's really not just about me anymore, it affects so much more than myself. So that's definitely became a concern for me.
But did you do anything about that then, Tehjuana?
So to be quite honest, I actually didn't think I had COVID.
Wow.
I didn't really have any symptoms. It was kind of finding out from other YAs back here that a few of them have had COVID, so I took it upon myself to get a test eventually, and I was very surprised when it came back positive.
Wow.
I literally had a headache for a day and a half, and that was it, and I just thought that was because I was run down, it's Christmas, up late, watching movies, etc. I really didn't think it would be COVID.
See, I know my brother caught it when he was in hospital, and he didn't know he got anything, and he was completely asymptomatic. So it's just such a mixed bag, isn't it? The picture is very, very mixed. Question then for you, Jesse. I already put Bayanda on the spot. Now what I want to do is so if you were invited, Buzz, your phone went, you had a text on your phone. Jesse Willis, you're invited to for your first vaccination on the 22nd of May. Would you go?
If I'm being honest, I'm not necessarily pro or against it, and I'm not necessarily have a sinister view against it. But if I'm being dead honest, a big factor would be, can I travel without it?
I didn't expect that.
Just because, well, I've got a honeymoon coming up potentially, potentially traveling to see family in Canada. That would, if I'm being honest, that would be a big factor for me. If they said you could travel without a vaccine, at this moment right now, I probably wouldn't get it. I'm not to say I wouldn't necessarily not get it in the future. We're just talking about May 22nd right now. I wouldn't get it. Not necessarily for sinister reasons either. I don't think the government's out to get us and there's something bad in it. But yeah, there are some things which we'll talk about, I'm sure will come out, which we'll refer to.
Just for viewers' sake, Jessie is getting married to Hannah on the 16th of July. So I can understand that really in a way. So there's some mixed motives going on there, isn't there, definitely. So same question I suppose to Tehjuana. Now if you were asked and invited to go in and have the jab now, would you jab or would you not jab?
Big question. I think for me at this current moment in time, I'd probably say no, just because my big kind of is I don't know enough about side effects. I think it's very early on. It hasn't even been a year since we've had the vaccine out. I just feel like there's very minimal information for me personally for side effects. So I feel like this current time I would say no, but that doesn't mean I'll rule it out completely for the future.
Yeah, you kind of you will remain open, but
yeah.
and I suppose you feel, you guys, rightly or wrongly, that because you've had COVID, you feel that you will have some protection anyway in the future, I guess.
Yeah,
Is that a consideration?
Part of it, yes. Yeah.
So you don't really want to travel to
I think I've been so used to not travelling now, I'm used to it.
yeah, I'm afraid I've not got used to not travelling.
I don't think you ever will.
I don't think you ever will.
No. So look, young adults, are there any other prevailing, predominant issues that you feel with the vaccine as young adults, or you know that young adults have reservations about it for any particular reasons?
Yeah, I know one of them we were chatting before was the whole fertility subject.
Oh, yeah.
And the potential side effects or consequences of having the vaccine. Does it affect your chances of getting pregnant and the whole fertility thing? And I know we will touch on that later on, and Dr.Edi as well will touch on that. I think one thing for me, I guess, when I think about that is, I know at first they were saying if you're thinking of having or wanting to get pregnant within the next 3 months, don't take the vaccine. Then they came out later on and said actually it's not as bad as we thought. Maybe the side effects aren't as bad. But I guess when I think about it is the fact they said that in the first place. I might be wrong, I don't know, I'd have to have a more expert, someone speaking to this, but have they said that about any other vaccine in the past? I don't know. So the fact that they said it in the first place makes me think, well, why did they say it? And I like what Tehjuana's point to say, it's not that I'm against it, but in a year's time, maybe we'll know more to actually speak into that. So maybe in a year's time, we'll figure out, actually, it doesn't affect it at all. And then at that point, we're at a point where I'm more like, okay, actually, yeah, okay, fine. The side effects are definite less. So.
It's interesting, they recommended that even women who are pregnant get the vaccine now, aren't they? They weren't doing that at the beginning.
Correct, yeah. But my thought process is, why did they say, I know maybe they didn't know as much about it, but did they say that about any other vaccine in the past? I don't know. The fact they brought it up in the first place makes me think
about this vaccine.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, that could be evidence of them being super careful.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
It's better to have it out there than keep it to themselves.
Of course. But then I guess as young adults, I don't want to speak for Bayanda and Tehjuana, would be like, but then what's the trade-off?
Yeah.
So if we're quote unquote had it, and I'm saying we're immune, and I know it potentially lasts up to 6 months anyways if you had COVID, but what's the trade-off? As in, if I take the vaccine, so I protect myself and I stop spreading it, but potentially if I take it, you might not be able to get pregnant, maybe, right? So what's the trade? So the question is to think, what's the trade-off?
Well, you won't anyway, will you? Because you're male. Sorry? You won't be able to get pregnant anyway.
Yeah, well, anyway, for me, yeah.
So listen, Tehjuana, do you want to speak into that as well? Because we had a debate a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
Which was kind of like, wow, it was like, somebody turned the lights on for me on that.
Yeah.
Quite a few of our young adults, and they felt that there were real issues with fertility.
100%, yeah. And I think the thing is, young adults, we can be very tunnel vision. We just kind of see now. We're not thinking about 20 years time or I don't know, like 8 years time when we have kids. But to be honest, when we had our debate, that was the first time I heard about the fertility issues. To be honest, so that surprised me. I did receive kind of a chain video, and it was warning why not to have the vaccine. And I know it was mentioned that there may be the potential that there are aborted fetus cells in the vaccine. So that alarmed me a lot. And then obviously hearing about the fertility issues from these guys, I was like, well, that's a lot to take in.
But you did hear about Pastor Chris, Professor Chris, who addressed the issue about fetal matter.
It was great because he was very direct and to the point, so that was quite comforting to hear as well.
But you know what? This is a really good point now to break and to go to Dr.Edi, who is leading obstetrician in the north of England and also gynaecologist. His expert field is fertility. I want you to listen to what Dr. Edi's got, and then I think we should just come back and talk some more through this. So, can I introduce Dr. Edi Osagie? It's my great pleasure to have with us tonight Dr. Edi Osagie. He's a leading obstetrician and gynaecologist. He's also a great Christian man, member of the Lighthouse for so many years now as well. So thank you so much, Eddie, for coming on the programme, To Jab or Not to Jab. We've had an amazing programme last week, and so it's great to have you with us this week. There are some questions that I think are absolutely down your street. And first one, if I may, is many Christians claim that they won't take the COVID-19 vaccine because it contains fetal matter within it from aborted fetuses, from unborn children. Is that true? And if so, what's your response to that?
Thank you very much, Pastor Paul. Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. And I think this is really a great thing to do, because I think as an organization, we really need to be plugging into this issue and using our influence and our reach to educate people, to give them the correct information and just empower them to make the right decisions for themselves. So going straight into that question, I think is a really good one, because that's a question that a lot of Christians are vexed about. And the simple answer to that question is that it is not true. The manufacturers of these vaccines have all come out variously to advise that they haven't used any aborted fetal cells to develop this vaccine. And so just to answer that question directly, it's not true at all. This vaccine doesn't contain any aborted fetal cells. It has nothing to do with aborted fetal cells. But just so that people understand the importance of using such cells, over the generations, medical practitioners, experimental investigators who develop drugs, who develop different ways of treating different diseases, have used what we regard as organic matter to try and develop these drugs. And those organic matter are really derived from fast dividing cells. And the two types of fast dividing cells we know about are cells that originate from cancer cells. So those cancer cells have been used to develop cell lines, and that we now have so many commercial cell lines that go into a lot of drugs that people take that they don't even realize are developed using that technology. And also cells that are derived from fetal tissue. And it really has nothing to do with aborted fetal tissue. Sometimes these are tissues that come from the placenta of babies that are born. They come from the fetuses that are miscarried sometimes. But essentially what they do is that they provide fast dividing cells that provide a really good medium for us to use to develop these new drugs, these new vaccines. And these drugs and vaccines have saved millions of lives across the world. And it's a technology that is very, very vital to the development of medicines and vaccines. There is really nothing that is against the Christian faith in any of these technologies. And I really want to reassure people that even when drugs are developed using those technologies, the drugs themselves do not contain anything to do with those cancer cells or those fetal miscarriage cells. They are just used as vehicles to channel the technologies to be able to produce those new medicines and drugs. But speaking specifically to COVID vaccine, the manufacturers have said specifically that they haven't used any of those cell lines to develop the COVID vaccine. So I think people should be reassured by those statements.
Brilliant, brilliant. That's really good and helpful, Eddie. I have got something that has cropped up. I mean, we spoke about it last week. The vaccines were designed and manufactured very, very quickly. Could you just speak into that for a moment? Because that's alarmed some people. How did we get these so quickly?
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, this is where information is really, really key. So although COVID-19, as we know it, is a very new infection, but COVID is actually a virus that belongs to the coronavirus family. And we've known about these viruses for years and years now. So coronaviruses have been with us since the 60s. They've been characterized, they've been sequenced. So we've known about them. And the first actual pandemic, if you like, from a coronavirus occurred in 1992 when we had the SARS virus, and subsequently we had the MERS virus. So over years, we have actually sequenced all of those viruses, and vaccines have actually been developed to those viruses, to MERS and to SARS. Fortunately, those pandemics were not bad pandemics, so we're able to get over them quickly. So we didn't get to the stage where the vaccines needed to be developed on a huge scale as we're doing now with COVID. But the vaccines were there, the technology was already present. So when COVID came along, and what people don't realize is that they think that maybe it was only in 2020 that we knew about COVID. The Chinese actually knew about COVID in December 2019. And by December 2019, the Chinese had actually sequenced the genetic material of COVID-19, and they had reported it to the WHO. They had shared it with scientists across all over the world. So it was very, very easy for everybody across the world to just get together and say, okay, we got the backbone for this coronavirus. We've got this new COVID that has come along. Let's, take that knowledge of the backbone, attach this new COVID-19 to it, and work quickly to provide something that is going to protect the world. And because there was a global effort, because so much money was thrown at it, and because so many, if you like, rigid rules and regulations were sort of relaxed to make sure we got a vaccine quickly, a lot of the phase trials that normally happen. So normally in the development of a vaccine, you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials, and each of those takes years to develop, yet take years to report. But what they did this time, it was that the regulatory authorities allowed all of those different phases to overlap because of the seriousness of the illness and because of the need to get something out there quickly. So the level of cooperation, the amount of resources available, the fact that there are so many subjects, if you like, so many ill people with the virus that we could study very easily, just meant that things happened really, really quickly. And that's why it was really, really easy for us to get these vaccines out very, very quickly.
Brilliant. Thanks, Eddie. Very, very, very briefly, I don't know whether this is a yes or no answer, but has the virus itself been isolated then?
Absolutely, the virus has been isolated. From December 2019, the Chinese had actually sequenced the virus. And nowadays, when we hear about, this strain, this new strain here, the Wuhan strain, the South African strain, the Brazilian strain, it's because each time somebody is tested and tests positive, the scientists here in the UK and in many other parts of the world sequence that virus very, very quickly so that we know if this is the strain that we've been dealing with or if this is a new strain. And that's why they're able to keep on top of things. And even now they're developing new vaccine variants that will target those new strains. So yes, the virus has been sequenced very, very comprehensively.
Right, massive question coming up for you. Huge one. In this programme that we'll be doing, the last programme for young adults and the vaccination, obviously the largest group reluctant to take the vaccine is actually young adults.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons we found, and I found speaking to many young adults, is that they feel that there is a threat to the fertility. Could you discuss that with us?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if I can just start by saying, absolutely categorically, to reassure everybody that there is no threat to fertility. I am a fertility specialist,
Yeah.
and the one thing I'll always do is to try and enhance people's fertility. If I see a threat to anybody's fertility, the first thing I'll do is to stamp out that threat. So I'll never advise anybody to take anything that I feel will be a threat to their fertility. So just some basic facts about this virus. So the coronavirus, the COVID virus, is an RNA virus. So when we look at genes, human genes, there are two broad types of genes. We have the RNA and then we have the DNA. So when it comes to fertility, the genes that are involved in our fertility in both the male and the female are DNA genes. They are not RNA. So that's the first thing. So coronavirus is an RNA virus. The second thing is that all of the vaccines that have been developed there's no vaccine that has been developed with the full complement of the COVID RNA virus. So we have the RNA extracts, like the Pfizer and the Moderna, where they have just taken little bits of the RNA and they've developed that in such a way that when they put that into any of us, our bodies will recognize it as a foreign body and develop antibodies to attack it. So there is no way that little bit of the RNA that is in Pfizer or Moderna can have any impact at all on the DNA that is involved in sperm and egg production and impact on fertility. That's the one thing. The other concern other people have is the other vaccines like the AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson, the so-called DNA vector vaccines. So because viruses cannot exist on their own, the RNA of coronavirus has been put into, if you like, a non-infectious chimpanzee DNA adenovirus, and that has been used in the AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines. But we know that that DNA virus is a totally non-infectious virus. It's been around for ages, and so many other vaccines have been developed in that way. And that virus does not in any way interact with the DNA that forms the main structure of our sperm and our egg that is utilized in fertility. Initially, when the virus program started, the advice we were given, obviously because with everything new, you're a bit cautious, was that people who were trying to achieve conception should not take the should not take the vaccine until we had a lot more information. And pregnant women should also not take the vaccine until we had more information. But a lot of information has come through now. So we have changed that advice. So we're now advising people who are trying to get pregnant to take the vaccine whenever they're invited to get it. People who are going through fertility treatment, including IVF, we're advising them to take the vaccine whenever they're invited to get it. And there's even a study now that has been completed with pregnant women taking the vaccine. And all of these have been done because it's been observed to be safe in all of these populations. So the virus, the vaccine do not get into sperm cells, they do not get into egg cells, they do not impact on the DNA that is involved in fertility. So I think we all need to be reassured by that.
That is wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Edi Osagi. We're indebted to you. Thank you for your advice on that. Thank you for your experience and coming in to speak on to jab or not to jab. I think that it's so informational and so reassuring, even for me, just that here. That's tremendously reassuring. Thank you so much.
Thank you. A pleasure.
Well, wow, that was really interesting from Dr. Edi Osagi. Thanks, Eddie. Let's bring that to our audience. How does that make you feel? Is that I wouldn't say changed your view at all? Straight like that, we need time to kind of process that. But Tehjuana, listening to that, does that?
Definite food for thought now. And I think hearing from a professional as well is really just kind of like, oh, you're saying some good stuff here. It's definitely something to consider and look into. So yeah, kind of like, took me back by surprise, to be honest, but really good stuff. Yeah.
Think about Dr. Edi now. I've known Dr. Edi for about 20 years. He's the top of the tree in what he does. What he does is facility.
Yeah.
So for him to say that with so much authority, it surprised me really.
Yeah, it's quite weighty.
Well, wasn't it?
Yeah, very weighty, yeah.
Jesse, any thoughts on what you
Yeah,
heard there?
no, really, really good stuff. And I think, like you're saying, when you hear it from someone who's professional, who knows their field and top of their field, it does carry weight. I was never totally against it, so I'm still where I am now. I'm not against it.
Has that settled some of the fertility side though for you?
Maybe a little bit. I'd have to think more and like look into it more. But yeah, it's good to hear someone, like you said, saying it with authority. But I think if anything would change my mind is just being reminded of how bad I caught COVID. If that changed my mind, if anything, that would actually be the.
Well, let's go there. Let's go there, because Bayanda, you were so poorly. You were really ill. Rachel was really ill. Tehjuana had a walk in the park. Headache. A little bit of a headache, you know. So it's going to make you feel like, wow. I mean, my sister-in-law had the jab and she was ill for a week. Now, talking to Professor Hendricks about that, it's a good job you had it. Because if she got COVID, she would have had it really bad. So there is that kind of thing to think about. How badly off you were when you got it. That is something, guys. I do want to say this. We're not here to say you should or you shouldn't jab. At the end of the day, everybody's got to make up their own mind. There's lots of people out there, and I think we come back to Jesse on this. I like what you said the other week. Confirmation bias. Can you just speak into that again?
Yeah, it was just about having where you already have your beliefs, so you go to get your beliefs reinforced. So
But this is about sources, isn't it?
So you go to the source. If you think the vaccine is a sinister thing, the government trying to control you or put something in your body, so you go to the sources to reinforce what you already believe.
It's very prescriptive information, isn't it? In that way. I was saying it before. It used to remind me of a lot of my relatives years and years ago used to have a thing called a promise box, and in the morning the first thing they do with it was all these little scrolls of paper, and it had a pair of tweezers, and what you did is you went in the morning, you pulled one out, and that was your promise. But they were all dead good. You wouldn't not want any of them. You know what I mean? So you were in a couldn't lose situation. It's not the way to read your Bible. Come on, I mean, it was lucky dip. You know, he was there before the lottery. You know, so we have to be careful about that kind of way of doing things, and with scripture and with information. And as I said at the very beginning of the vaccine, I'm still convinced about it. It's on my Facebook stream. For me, I don't think the biggest issue was the vaccine. I think the biggest issue is trust. Trust in the government, trust in the politicians, trust in the medical people, trust in the big reset and all the sinister stuff going on. Of course, that all may be there, it may not be there, it may be. I think we all realise there's something in the background of it all, but the bottom line for us is we don't want to be ill.
It's true.
and there are a lot of COVID deniers out there that it doesn't even exist. Listen, I as you guys know, I'm always in touch with Indian pastors. I was early this morning, late last night, speaking to pastors today. I have a friend of mine in Goa who's a pastor. When he and his wife were asked to go and get the jab, they expected a massive queue of people. When they got there was no one there. They were shocked. They had the vaccination, but people were too afraid to go and get the vaccination. Now, people are dying left, right and centre. And yes, they are. Not just in Delhi, in Bangalore, in Chennai, in Mumbai, big cities, and even some of the rural communities. So we had 46 people in one church died last week in Bangalore. And I was speaking to the pastor yesterday, and he is just, I've never seen him in all the years I've known him, I've never seen him so quite demoralised, really well. He's trusting in the Lord, he's not, you know, but the bottom line is they're seeing death constantly every day. And so it's a lot to take in. So, and the thing to remind people is this, and we've got people in our church from Brazil, we've got people in our church from India, countries like that, they are having a nightmare with this thing. So when people say it doesn't exist, just hang on a moment. Think of those countries. Now, the countries that seem to be doing well now are the ones that are vaccinating their people. The ones that are having the biggest struggle are the ones who are not able to vaccinate their people at these levels. Brazil, India, some of the other countries. So we have to draw some conclusions from that, don't we? So I certainly think that, and going back to this, you all feel the same, I'm sure, that look, doctors, the NHS, the medical world, don't we thank God for that?
100%,
You know, like I say, you know, if I fell off a ladder and broke my arm, would you pray or go to the doctor? I'd do both. And so, if we're sick, if we're ill, we need to have medical attention. And the medical attention and the ability to be healed and cured from by medical means is a very, very great gift that God has given us through nature. It's not supernature, it's nature. But nature sometimes is super, right? But there are times when God will step in supernaturally and do things, and we thank God for that. So I think personally, I'm not sure. I'll make this surmisation maybe. If you were to be invited to have the vaccine now, would you take it?
Probably give it more thought
Than before.
Yeah.
I think I would be the same. I think, like I was saying earlier, I think the big thing for a lot of young people is the lack of information and some of the information that they get. I was saying with Jesse.
Do you think it's lack of information, or do you think it's wrong sources for information?
Wrong sources. So sometimes I think even social media has a big play. Like I think when the vaccine, first came out, there was a lot of influencers and people on social media that kind of
the celebs.
That made fun of the vaccine. They kind of were like, maybe when you have the vaccine, you start barking after a week. Those kind of things. I know they're all really small things, but these are things that go into the subconscious.
Right.
These are things that people are really thinking about. So I think information from the right sources, i.e. people like Dr.Edi, gives us a lot more room for us to consider and think more about it.
It's funny though, isn't it, Jess, who's saying a lot of these celebrities have turned now, haven't they?
It's true.
They're all going out there saying, get your vaccine, stay safe, guys. Get your jab, aren't they? Some of the ones who were laughing at the beginning.
It's true.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it's true, and I think a lot of them have experienced and also seen people who have struggled and lost people, to COVID, and for some of us who have had it here, or have had relatives that have had it, we know what it's like, and we know how intense it can be, and I think that gives a bit of reality.
Changes your outlook.
Changes the perspective.
Perspective definitely changes.
If you lose somebody close to you through it.
So after a whole year, I think that has a lot of play into it now.
Oh Oh well, do you know what? The 17th of May
Yeah.
is coming.
Yeah.
Not long to go now.
Not long to go.
100%.
And thank the Lord that
Yes.
we looks
Yeah.
like we are going to get through this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for being here tonight. Thank you for giving us an honest appraisal of COVID and the jab from young adults' minds and eyes and thoughts and opinions. I think it's been really, really helpful. I hope it's helped you too. That's the end of this mini-series. I hope it helped you or reassured you in one way or another. Thank you for watching. God bless you. Please stay safe, stay well, and be good.